Welcome back to our latest Realm of the Elderlings spoiler chat discussions between me and Colin's Corner. Colin, how you doing on this fine Sunday morning?
Pretty good. Woke up a little later than I wanted to, but
Yeah, me
we're
too.
good.
Me too. Got some coffee going.
I got some tea going.
Oh, nice, nice. For
But
others,
yeah,
it's
I'm
very
good.
late. Derry, are you here at 4 a.m.? Is that the situation? Sorry about that. Is that at the end of your night or at the beginning of your morning? Oh man,
Gary's
sorry,
amazing.
Derry.
Claudia.
Morning, chat. Yeah. Thanks for coming. We are here to discuss what have become two of my favorite Elderlings books. Let's go. Dragon
They kind
Keeper
of match
and
what I'm
Dragon
wearing.
Haven. We got the matching books, the matching covers.
These are the
Nice.
only US covers that I actually think are good.
Yeah, they're solid.
The Rain
Yeah.
Wild Chronicles. Like these are I wish they all looked like this. I mean, it doesn't give much away about the book, but they look nice.
Yeah, and they have like a coherent design, but they're each different. So I like
Yeah.
the colors on the dragons kind of popping on these covers.
Yeah,
But
me
yeah,
too.
they're elegant. They're elegant, nice US covers. But this is a weird sub series because it's the only 4 book sub series, and this to me honestly felt like one book. Like I read them back to back because
You did
the
read
first
them
one,
pretty back to back. I almost
yeah.
read them back to back though.
Oh yeah, because the first one, it very much felt like volume one of a 2-part story that wraps up in Haven. Like the camera reverses everything, so that was trippy. But
Yeah, when you're trying to point at things.
yeah.
Um,
But so this to me honestly feels like one book, which is why it felt natural to want to have a chat discussion about both of them. I am curious what the next two are going to feel like. If they're going to feel like more like their own books or also a kind of 2-part story, but we'll come to that later. But yeah, I read these back to back, was so hooked by the story, the characters, plights, just uh, could not have been more invested in this and got almost immediately invested. We could start by doing non-spoiler chatting in case anyone is gonna just flip to this video. We'll start by just giving some non-spoiler reactions, but getting into the spoiler stuff very, very soon. But what do you think, Colin?
so I said this in my wrap up, my last couple wrap ups, and I think Dragon Keeper was my least favorite book that I've read in the Realm of the Elderlings so far, but I still really enjoyed it. And I think the main reason for that for me was, which I don't think you had this issue, it's so I really enjoyed the plot. Like the plot that's going on, I think is
Yeah,
awesome. And it's obviously stuff that is going to affect the world at large, people and places that we also know and love from other subseries. But especially in Dragon Keeper, it is the book that I felt the least connected to the characters with so far in the entire series. And so I think the stakes didn't feel quite as high for me in
mm,
Dragon Keeper. Um, but then with Dragon Haven, I grew to care more and know more of the characters on a deeper level, and obviously the plot thickens as they tend to do in book twos, and I enjoy Dragon Haven a lot more than I thought I was originally going to because I felt better with the characters. I felt like you know
yeah,
more emotionally attached to them and
yeah.
worried for what was happening, and so I don't know. I think this set of characters just didn't quite click as deeply with me as any of the other sub series, like even Live Ship Traders. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
just specifically a Fitz thing, but I still loved both of them. Even though that this might end up being my least favorite sub series, which I don't think is an unpopular opinion for the series on a whole. But I still really enjoyed both of these.
Oh, great. Yeah. I can relate to your experience, especially with book one, because I think that's what it was like for me with Ship of Magic, actually, where it took me time to really deeply feel connected to the cast. And oh, you froze, so I want to make sure
Yeah, you
that
did for a
gets
second
resolved.
too.
Oh, let's see. Are we back? You're back. Okay.
Think so.
Yeah.
There we go.
So
I think we're good.
it took me a while to connect to the cast in Ship of Magic and find my bearings in that series, but maybe like halfway through that chunky book one, I really started to feel that connection, and then everything was clicking in. But I can see that because if you're not connected to the characters yet and the conflicts and what they're going through, then yeah, I could. It's just the reading experience is different and not as impactful. But from this one, I
Yeah.
it was different. It was different for me because I almost immediately was just so connected to Elise and Thymara and even Cedric and Leftrin was intriguing to me, but so I was almost more quickly connected to this cast than in any of the Elderlings what book ones like Assassin's Apprentice or Ship of Magic. So I was like immediately connected to the characters. I cared so much, and then it's already kind of hitting its stride with this important plot for the whole series, and we're in a setting that's she's so amazing with it being immersive in the Rain Wild, but also spending time in Bingtown too. So and it was so easy to fall into just caring and immersion at the start of this. But I'm almost worried I'm gonna start saying spoilers. So let's uh let's just let's just get into the spoiler section and not worry about having to guard our words. So if you have not read Dragon Keeper or Dragon Haven or any of the previous Elderlings books, especially the live ship traders. Actually, no, Tawny Man too. Yeah, this is going to be spoilers up through the first two Rain Wild books. So, uh, buyer
Yeah,
beware if
pretty
you
much.
continue and come back later and see the replay if you have not made it this far. So yeah, spoilers from here on out. And we got some more people in chat.
Rogier, how's
Okay.
it going?
Nice to see you here. So Derry said something interesting in the comments. If I can find it. She said, so I don't know anything about the publishing history of this series. They were one book. The publisher pushed for more YA content as it came out at the height of YA. Okay, interesting. Because everyone that I see that is loving Elderlings, but then says on BookTube or in reviews that like the series felt like a step down. It got a little bit YA and there's love triangles and stuff like that's by far the most common complaint I see is that it felt a little too YA. So I feel like this is just a publisher meddling where they shouldn't, because if we're this far into a series, like the overall kind of tone and style and kind of project that Hob is doing, like it should not be interfered with. But I guess the publisher might have viewed this as just a new sub series that Hob was doing, just like kind of related or disconnected in the same world. And so they wanted her to try to get into a new market for a profit.
Yeah,
And I hate this. I hate this. But I will say, I think if Hob was pushed by the publisher to do more YA, that it didn't feel to me like a out of place for the Elderling series. Like it felt natural to have a teenage character here in Thymara or and other teenage characters be the Dragon Keepers. Like it made sense in world why they were the case. I will say though, I could have done with a little less of the YA tropes with like I didn't need the character of Grift, I think that it is, who was like the 20 something older dragon keeper who was like aggressive and like sexually aggressive and kind of like dominant in terms of power dynamics. He wanted uh he he created a lot of conflict within the keeper group that I felt to me maybe was unnecessary, that I would have been satisfied just with the tension and conflict of like can this bunch of keepers like succeed in getting these dragons to a safe place or getting them to like that's a tense enough situation. Like I didn't need the the keeper social conflicts really in this story to keep me interested. So if that was forced on her by the publisher, I am sorry for that because it seems it didn't turn me off from the reads at all, but that was the least necessary part of it. But it seems like it really didn't work for a lot of fans of the series. So yeah, publishers stay out of authors' business. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I don't know the history, and maybe it is so actually just I really try not to do this like when I talk about books. Um, and Kronk, do you know who Kronk the book guy is?
Yeah, yeah. I
He's
was
a
on
relatively new channel, but
Joanna's Why
he's like,
Read. I was on
oh
Joanna's Why
yeah,
Read
that's right, that's
discussion
right.
with him. Yeah.
So shout out to him. He just released a video about YA, the term YA, and it's amazing. And I couldn't really put into words as well as he did why this is what I do, but I feel like as book reviewers, a lot of times people will unfairly use YA as a determinant for whether or not somebody should or shouldn't like something. And I don't think that that's fair because maybe the publishers pushed Cobb to make this more of a YA feel, but in my opinion, if the publishers are the ones that forced her to do that, she still pulled it off in a pretty spectacular fashion. Like it didn't feel like I needed to be 12 years old to read this book and enjoy it. Yes, like you said, maybe there are some tropes that are common with YA, but I feel like when people say this felt like YA as a metric as whether or not somebody that's read the rest of these books will enjoy this book, I don't quite think that that's fair
No.
because in my opinion, although maybe these characters didn't click with me the most, I will tell you for sure it's not because it felt YA.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I will say
and I
though,
guess
yeah,
we'll get into more Gref talk. I'm
yeah,
assuming as we get further into this because I have some
yeah, yeah.
comments
We'll try to start early
on
on
Gref as
in the
well.
book. We got Drew in town. Hello, hello.
Hey, Drew.
Also, they're already in the chat talking about the horrible Hest. Yeah, yet
We'll get to
another
Hest.
Hob Hob villain that is so reprehensible. You want to strangle them through the pages. Yep,
Oh,
we'll get to that pretty soon, I think, because I want to start maybe in Bingtown. So,
okay.
man, the character of Elise is someone that I just almost immediately connected to. Like I felt so empathetic for her. She's just this good-hearted, earnest, curious person. She is interested by scholarly pursuits, which is not something that women in Bingtown are supposed to be doing. And she is not confident kind of socially and romantically. And so that's been holding her back and putting herself out there. And it's just so sad as she's so young in like our world terms, but she thinks like she's already kind of doomed to like a life of solitary like scholarship in Bingtown. Um, and like it was just so easy for me to kind of feel sympathetic towards her, and um, so I was so connected to Elise and just felt so bad for her, and was so empathizing. I was like really living her perspective. I thought Hobb just wrote her in such an immersive way where I was like really just like her in these earlier chapters where she's getting hope about this trader handsome Hest who's like showing her some affection. It's like it felt realistic from her perspective that she would buy that someone might be interested in her. Like she is an exceptional person in a lot of ways, and um so even if she's not conventionally attractive by Bingtown standards, people like unconventional looks all the time. So I was like getting hopeful myself reading those chapters where I'm like, ooh, Hess seems like could be a nice trader guy, and things are gonna work out for Elise romantically, and she'll now have resources to pursue her scholarship. But I don't know, maybe when I go back, there might have been some signs, but when they have their like heart first real honest heart to heart about like the arrangement that Hest wants to arrange, then the red flags started to emerge, where it's like, oh, Hest is not interested in her, and he sees this as as like a business arrangement, and I'm like, oh no, okay, this could go very poorly, but it ends up going much worse than I expected because Hest ends up being cruel and
Yeah.
uh, not just, but he's also, it's a complicated thing where uh in Bingtown society, you can't be openly gay and he can't have openly gay relationships. And so he views, if this arrangement could have worked out, I think, where everyone is on the same page and uh, and had the same kind of rules for each other. And Elise thought it was going to be that way. But then Hest was breaking the rules and wasn't completely honest and uh, and treated her horribly and then just did horrible awful things to her and then Hest we learn later even through Cedric treated Cedric horribly even and so Hest almost seems kind of sociopathic in the it comes off or sadistic because it's cruel and being cruel kind of gives him pleasure, which I think someone was mentioning it in here if he was worse than Kyle, but uh, yeah, Kyle never seemed sadistic. He always seemed like he had his kind of reasons for doing things or for wanting his family members to do things, for the good of the family. But I don't think he wanted to cause pain for pain's sake. But Hess does seem to kind of be more on that sadistic side. So yeah, just a really terrifying character once you start seeing what he's doing and what he's really like. Terrifying that Elise is connected to him, and I wanted it for this whole series for Elise to be like, "Screw Hest, I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing." So when she goes off, and but then she's still kind of feeling like bound by the marriage and everything. And then when she finally learns that he had been unfaithful with Cedric, and she gives herself the permission to just be free completely. Like, oh my god, it felt so freeing to me as the reader that Elise could pursue her own life, not attached to bound to someone so terrible. So man, I found myself rooting for Elise so much and connected to her, probably having a crush on her as well. Yeah, this is one of my favorite Elderlings characters. So she clicked from the very beginning because I thought her initial situation in Bingtown was so sympathetic and um, man, yeah, just lovely. Curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, Hobb does a fantastic job of painting a picture of like Elise's just life. Um, like you were mentioning, it was pretty devastating to just read her perspective where she really just assumed that she was doomed to this life of, solitary academic endeavors because she was told by people that loved her, and all the signs were pointing towards the fact that she would not find a suitor. She wasn't the prettiest. Her family wasn't the wealthiest. Um, and, and she was past her prime in Bingtown culture, like past the time when most women are married and given to another man. And I don't know if, and I'm not like a history buff, and this could be off base. I'm not sure. I'm not speaking from any point of like authority on this, but it felt almost to me kind of like maybe like a, I don't know, colonial American type of like thought process, how they have
Yeah,
marriage, where it's just strictly based off of, uh, for the most part, it's strictly based off of like wealth, like financial support, and the ability to bear an heir. Like,
yeah, yeah,
because that's literally all Hest cared about is his status in Bingtown, which was already good to other traders, being solidified by the fact that he now was married to a woman that could bear him an heir and take care of homely duties while he did his trading stuff. And we as the reader know that that's his literal only intention, that he doesn't even is not romantically attracted to Elise at all. But then we get into Elise's head where she almost sells us on the fact that she's going to give it a go. She's going to really try to make Hest love her.
Yeah,
And
and that's so
we feel
sad.
her like
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to like spruce herself up with
Yeah. Oh,
perfumes
so
and
sad.
like
Yeah.
make their, romantic life like enjoyable and not a forced thing. Like
Oh,
she was like, oh, if we're going to have a kid, let's at least have fun with it. And like, maybe
yeah.
we'll fall in love. And I mean, Hess is just like, nope, like off doing his own thing. Like, I'm going to, you know, put a seed into this girl. She's going to give me an heir and we're going to be, doing our own thing, but married. And it was really devastating to like, to just see all this play out. And the, the contract signing was very cool. Like it was a very
Yeah.
interesting, like I really like how Hobb likes to do this specifically with Bingtown, it seems like, where she builds out the culture. Because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
learned a lot about Bingtown already, but she
Yeah.
built out yet another aspect of Bingtown culture where we see these, and it's so spot on for the culture because these are traders. Like they say that all the time. We're traders. There's always a bargain, there's always a negotiation, and even marriages, all the way down to their marriages, are like completely written out, like what the responsibilities are of each party
Yeah.
and what happens if the
Yeah.
contract
Oh,
is breached. Like
that's a
it was a
great scene.
very
Great scene.
cool
Yeah.
like world building aspect.
Yeah.
And then
Awesome.
you were right. I mean, we'll get into it too, where we see Elise slowly and kind of gruelingly start to break out of her shell and become her own woman. And I think, the marriage with Hest and the trauma that she began to go through were the catalyst, pun intended, for her change.
Yeah.
Later on in book one and even into book two.
Yeah. Oh my God. The beginning of their relationship and marriage is so sad. When you're right, Elise is hopeful that maybe like Hest could have a crush on her, but she's so naive when it comes to just like homosexuality, or like it seems like other characters all like maybe even other like female characters are like know more about like Hest and Cedric, and that there's a kind of underground kind of gay culture in Bingtown, or but Elise is just like totally not clued into that, and so like if she were, it would have been so much better for her, where she wouldn't get up these hopes that it's like, oh, she now thinks it's her that is the issue, that she's not attractive enough for Hest, or you know, and so it makes her feel terrible. And man, it makes sense that a character in that kind of society might not be clued into that if they had kind of no one kind of helping them learn about, because it's just not something that's out in the open. But and there's no internet culture and media where that is going on. Um, so man, I felt so bad for Elise, but later when Leftrin like pretty obviously is like attracted to her and has a crush on her, like it's so great to be with her then, where she's feeling like, oh, like she's gaining more confidence, like she can uh be seen as attractive and beautiful. And it was such a relief when she was away from Bingtown and out on her journey. Like I was so happy for her for so many reasons, but that she was able to go on that journey, because it was she was just going to be living out like half a dream if she was stuck in Bingtown and trying to do her scholarship on dragons, like through whatever scrolls and secondhand stuff she could get her hands on. But like now she has an opportunity to study it firsthand and be there for a momentous event and be truly like a world expert on dragons. And it was just the most special possible thing for her. And to see her initially be kind of this, dainty Bingtown kind of person who's out of place in the Rain Wild, and but then to kind of be going further out of her comfort zone and embracing like befriending the dragons, talking to them, putting herself in danger, getting dirty. Um, it was such a rewarding journey, these two books going on with Elise, where she just like completely kind of metamorphosing into something from the caterpillar or the serpent, but going through the
Yeah.
cocooning and then becoming like a powerful she dragon herself. Um, no, that I felt that was such a powerful arc, and it felt kind of complete as a character arc across these two books, where she eventually, there was the worry if Leftrin was kind of like playing her a little bit, but then she realized like no, like I understand like what Leftrin's situation was. I am deciding for myself that I'm gonna be in this relationship and leaving Hess behind, and just like taking agency and control of her life. Uh, and she's in such a happy place by the end of this. Like I'm kind of scared.
Yeah.
Like where's this gonna go for a lot of the characters? But like Elise's kind of character arc, I felt like uh, kind of it went so far over the course of these two books. It was so satisfying to me.
Speaking of Leftrin, when we first met him, I thought he was going to be a bad guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How great
No,
was that
this,
introduction? I mean, he
in
just seems like a
that first
pirate,
chapter, that
like a
first chapter
sneaky
inner
little.
monologue. Yeah, yeah. He seems because he's stealing something. He's stealing a wizardwood log, first of all, and we know that that's
He
like
knows what he's doing is wrong.
yeah. And so he's stealing something. It seems to be for his own gain. We're not too sure what he's stealing it for. And he does seem like kind of like a schemer and someone who's a little shady. Yeah, that intro. But then as we spend more time with him and realize like, oh, he actually treats his crew well, like family, and he has this like really cool relationship with his ship, the Tarman, and like
Yeah, but even that
he
whole
yeah,
intro setup, like
yeah,
he, I didn't trust him for a while
yeah,
because we don't get a ton of his inner monologue, and part of the reason that I thought he treated his crew so well is because he had them all sign that like lifetime contract
yeah,
because he didn't want the people that knew what he did to leave
yeah,
and kind of drag his name through the dirt and get him in trouble. So Hobb did a really good job of making him interesting right off the bat to me. Like I didn't think he was like wholly a bad character, but I didn't trust him for a while because of that intro that we got. I'm like, is he scheming like all the time? Is there gonna
yeah,
be
yeah.
some
Oh,
crazy
totally.
reveal where he's setting everybody up this whole time and he's definitely been in it for the profit, and then we obviously see his character arc kind of grow and change too. But I loved getting introduced to Lefter, and I thought that was a
Yeah.
really really well done character
I loved
introduction.
how Hub plotted the whole beginning of this series with the whole how it all got set up for everyone to go on the journey up the river, where kind of Leftrin was the only one that could really do it, but he had that leverage, and so he made it so like Elise could go with him, with like the what is that Rain Wild Council? Is that what it's called? That was deciding like
Yeah, the
about
trade. I think it was just called like the
journey.
Traders Council.
But I loved that kind of like meeting Elise too, and like them being so awkward initially, like walking around the Rainwild like tree cities, and Elise is like can barely walk around on these like rope platforms and
Yeah,
bridges. Leftrin's just like an old hatted, and also just like how unrefined he is, but that to Elise that's very attractive. But then to Cedric, it was such a turnoff. Like I loved just how Hobb integrated Leftrin into this plot and the group, and the Tarman too was such an interesting thing. I love that we got more world building around dragons and live ship stuff in this series, because Tarman is something that we haven't seen before. Just like not like one of the live ships with a figurehead, so not like as verbal or um, as the live ships, but seemingly still like sapient and able to communicate in other ways, and like kind of has a painted on face. So like it's a whole
yeah.
different kind of live ship that we're getting with the Tarman, which really just I think made things more interesting and mysterious around the live ships. And um, So that was really cool. But we should maybe go back to the very beginning, actually, because I remember you were in a bit of a reading slump after Fool's Fate, and favorite book of all time, and amazing finale to that trilogy and all that. And I was like, you got to start Dragon Keeper, like Hob is gonna get you out of it. And you started Dragon Keeper, and you first get hit with like the prologue, I think it is, where it's basically just picking up right where Live Ship Traders left off, with
Yep.
the serpents making their journey up the river. Like, oh my god, that
It was exactly
chapter
what I needed.
was amazing. Like, I thought like it ended at Live Ship where you're like, oh, and everything is gonna be happily ever after for everyone, and all of the serpents are gonna become beautiful dragons. And then it's like, oh my god, this journey up the river is harrowing, and they're dying along the way, and then they get there, and there's not enough time and heat to make the cocoons properly, and Tintaglia is just like scrambling and doing whatever she can to get
Yeah.
people in their cocoons. Like, that was an amazing start to this
Yeah.
series.
I mean, it was like the complete opposite of how nicely Fool's Fate got wrapped up, where yes, there was a lot of sorrow and heartache and terrible things happened, but like the very end, it felt like, the bow that it was tied with had so much that I wanted to happen that actually did happen in a believable way, that I was ready to just like roll into the Rain Wilds, and like you said, the dragons, after all the serpents, after all this time, were just going to cocoon and everything was going to be kosher. And nope, like it was terrifying. Like getting the
Yeah.
serpents' inner monologue, like all of them just like mentally scrambling, like, oh my god, Tintaglia, like just running every direction or flying or whatever she's doing. Like, this dragon's dead. Quit trying. Like, come help me on this one. This one still has a chance. Like, it was just like really morbid and like just so sad being zoomed in on them, because I'm sure the people helping didn't really even know how bad things were, I don't think, until Tintaglia started like telling people, like, you got to help, like this is not going well. Like,
Yeah.
she's like even helping to form cocoons with her spit, and there's not enough like water or whatever they need to make it work in a lot of cases, and you're just like, oh my gosh, did they do all of this for nothing? Like, these poor serpents have been
Yeah.
just in the water for who knows how long. And yeah, it was a crazy opening sequence.
And then we get actually the introduction to Thymara, which is, I love that she did this, where she introduced a character intersecting a major plot event, which was her watching the hatching. And like, that was such an interesting scene, because like everyone's so optimistic, and then the hatching just goes terribly wrong because the dragons aren't fully formed. And
Yeah, I pictured this as like some amazing world event,
yeah.
maybe like a space shuttle taking off, where there's so many eyes on it and so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
people are waiting for this thing to happen, and the tension is so incredibly high because they know this could be a world altering event in a positive way or a negative way. And then like seeing their reactions, the people's reactions, like as these deformed dragons start emerging from the cocoons, is like devastating, as they like we get to see them realize, like, oh, something is really not right here. Like, these dragons are
Yeah.
just dying like as soon as they hatch, or fighting each other for food. And like it was a really just vivid depiction of like how the onlookers must have felt in this moment where they realized things are bad.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, uh, yeah. The dragon and serpent stuff in the beginning, so great. Just, it was it was so deflating too, because it like, for me, I was like, oh man, like all this trouble we went through in Lai's ship, and then the dragons are just having a rough time of it. And but yeah, Derry's right. Yeah, we see that they don't thrive in these conditions, and then once they finally do get the conditions they need, they really do start to grow more. And those warming platforms, and um, yeah, just right now it's tough, and they're just like shunted onto this little area of land in where are they? Are they near Treehog or Kasserek? Maybe is where they all the dragons end up living near Kasserek, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think so. Yeah.
but they're just like living in this giant mess where they barely are moving. They're cold. They're miserable. Like I felt so bad for the dragons situation, and it's just like, oh god, let's get them out of there. Like even like when the humans in Keswick, like they're causing us too much trouble. Like we can't uh like mine the old Elderlings site with them there. Like they're costing us too many resources to feed them. Even though like the people of the Ring Wilds just like wanted them away and didn't care about them, I was so happy that they arranged for the mission with the Dragon Keepers, and like to see the dragons too, and Mercor I think was the ringleader trying to like arrange their journey to
Yeah.
Kelsinga. Like he wanted to kind of trick the council too into arranging it, and Elise like is trying to get in the middle of that and be like, no, they're tricking you, like they're just sending you away because they don't want you here anymore. But like yeah, everyone's happier that way. Like Mercor knows the dragons need to get away from this and find a better place. And so it all kind of works out for everyone that they can go on this mission, including working out for the dragon keepers, because yes, Chadia says there's this echoing where the dragons are not wanted, but the dragon keepers in the Rain Wild settlements were also unwanted. It's like they were seen as, almost like taboo, like untouchables in society, because they had like, dragon features, physical features, and they often would like die young. And so like, man, that is so the way Hob is just so brutal with writing this stuff, because like she says like those kinds of kids in the Rain World only survive if the parents don't do what they're supposed to and like leave the infants out to die. So like
Yeah.
Mara only survived because her dad rescued her after being like put out as an infant. Like that's so brutal. Like that Hob goes there, and so they're all just like these untouchables, and it's so sad because they're really like it's just this cultural norm that arose in Rainwild society, maybe for seemingly justified reason. If they do all die very young, then like it makes sense that the society would come to see that it's taboo to kind of prevent all the tragedy and heartbreak of that. But in the end, though, it's because they are close to the dragons. It's like they're becoming like half elderlings or something. And
Right.
in like the previous society, or to the dragons, they're seen as like the scaling and dragon features are seen as beautiful and signs of nobility, and elderlings are to be exalted. And so like it was cool for the dragon keepers to kind of get away from the Rainwild society where they're shunned, and to kind of just be able to form their own kind of new identities and lives where they're not just kind of oppressed and shunned to the side, but they could kind of flourish on their own, and the dragons could appreciate them, and they could all start to appreciate their kind of dragon features. And uh, yeah, I enjoyed that aspect of the whole dragon keeper, like this group of outcasts kind of uh, going off and finding their way. That was satisfying to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Hob, obviously, once we start to meet Thymara and like Tats and some of the uh, eventual Dragon Keepers, I mean, right off the rip, just with what you were describing, how they were just expected to be left out because, and part of it was obviously it was horrible, but part of it also was, I mean, it was a very subtle act of world building that said so much. Like these deformed children, infants, were seen as potential, like weights. Like they were just gonna the resources in the Rain Wilds were already so scarce, and it was expected of members of the Rain Wild Society to be able to contribute positively to the society and gather resources or hunt or something to serve the people. And
Yeah.
these deformed infants were assumed that they were going to grow up and not be able to support, so they were just going to be consuming resources and not be any benefit to anybody. And so, like, right off the bat, just with that knowledge, we get a feel for how all of these now young, adults must feel. Like they already always, no matter where they go in their society, feel like they are unwanted
Yeah.
because they should have died. They should have not been here. And so people probably always look at them constantly and think like, oh, like they never should have saved you. Like, what are you doing for us? Like they probably have never felt accepted. And uh, the the kind of pairing, like I think Derry was mentioning, or somebody was mentioning earlier, the pairing of these unwanted people with now the dragons who had become unwanted. They had become like a massive version of what everybody worried these deformed Rainwild's kids would be, because they're huge. They're consuming tons of resources, and not only that, they're
Yeah.
taking up time of other Rainwilders that could be contributing to the Rainwild society, because they now have to go get food for them, like massive animals for them to eat constantly. And they were ruining the geography of the area because of how big they were. And so that they just become unwanted eventually. And so, like, we see the nobility, like, well, what's the easiest thing we can do? We just get rid of all of them at the same time. Like, these
Yeah.
unwanted people can care for these unwanted creatures. And it's a mission that's doomed to fail. They'll probably all die. Cool, we tried the dragon experiment. It didn't work. Check that box. Let's get on with our lives. And then we see this
Yeah.
whole thing where there's some hope for all of them.
Yeah, and including the tattooed, as Derry mentioned, like Tats is living just at like just trying to scrape by any way he can in Kasaric as well. And so like yeah, Hob is pulling the rug out from under us, where like the happy ending of live ships, where the serpents are all going to become dragons, and the tattooed and the freed slaves are just going to integrate into society. Yeah, didn't all go as well as we might have hoped there.
That would have been too boring.
Yeah, but like so Tats also, like, I love that it was a different kind of shunned character that we got introduced to, and you could tell like from the very beginning. I thought that he really liked Thymara. From Thymara's
Oh, yeah.
POV, I think Hob gave us clues that like, oh, Tats liked Thymara, kind of like romantically, had a crush on her, and as a friend too, really like leaned on her. But that Thymara was naive and just had no clue, and was was just dense about that.
The
So
way she had her mom like barking down her neck to like stay away from
oh my
that boy.
god,
Like,
yeah. Oh, hey Joe, welcome, welcome.
hey Joe.
Um, but yeah, the mom, man, what a horrible, horrible person. Just like didn't even want Thamara to exist in the first place, and now totally resents her presence, and doesn't, I think, like that her husband has a really close relationship to Thymara and cares about her a lot, um, and she doesn't want Thymara staining her anymore by associating with the riffraff. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
was so happy that Thymara could get away. Like, yeah, her dad was great, and she, like, I know she knew it was gonna make her dad sad to go away and leave him with that horrible woman. But man, was I relieved when Thymara got out of there and away from her mom, and then, um, but like I also, we could talk about Thamara a little bit. Like this was a teenage character that I was not annoyed by. Like in some books, I can get annoyed by the teenage character, or like even in Elderlings, like Malta in the very beginning, like she got on my nerves. Like she grated on me, and but this was a teenage character that I just felt so empathetic for, because we saw Hub set it up so well, like how she's mistreated in Rain Wild society by her own mom, and that she is this she is this really good-hearted person, and I just love, following and rooting for those really good-hearted characters who are just, have to overcome conflicts in the way society's treating them to kind of come into their own. And like Elise and Thymara are very similar kind of characters, but interestingly, like, Elise is just a little older and also from a different uh, town as well. And so Hop came at the same kind of character arc from a few different directions, and I really like that. But man, getting Thymara out of the the society in the Rain Wild and on and with the dragon, like, oh, that was so cool. Like that is what Thymara needed. And I love Thymara's confidence. Like she's so competent in terms of like her hunting and surviving out in the forest. And she wanted to take on like the biggest, most beautiful dragon. So she like went straight for Centaura when it was time to like choose a dragon. And the two of them just both being strong-willed and clashing, like that was one of my greatest joys of these two books was Thymara and Centaura kind of going at it and neither kind of giving the other ground, but like that was what
Yeah.
Centaura needed because Centaura needed a strong hand, and she respects Thymara when Thymara like has that fire, and like since like when Centaura would make comments about like oh she is worthy or something, like I just love that. I ate that up. Man, I so Thymara is another character that was just really working for me and got me invested early and kept me invested, and could have probably done with a little less of the social conflicts among the keepers on the journey. Like I said, especially with Greft and the all the different like romantic stuff. Probably could have done with a
Yeah.
little bit less of that, but it didn't get in the way really of my investment.
Funny enough, I guess this would be the time to talk about this because I wanted to bring this up regarding Greft. And I think, kind of like the natural occurrences of things in a situation like this felt like they occurred for me. Like we get a group of younger people who, have finally been given a chance, although everybody thinks it's basically a futile effort and that they're all just going to die, except for them. They don't think that. They are like determined to make this thing work. And then they're spending all this time together in this confined, boat, dragging on through mucky, gross, just like bogs basically, and just going through it and having to, figure out who's going to be what part of the group. And there's obviously going to be the guy Greft who wants to kind of be, I don't know,
The alpha male.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, alpha male, like start some kind of like anarchist type thoughts, like, oh, we'll break away from society. They thrust us out anyways. We'll start our own. He's got his own motives. And I think, and although a lot of them might be unrealistic with Greft, for me, I feel like Hobb was kind of playing the long haul with Greft because eventually, once we get to Keeper, all of this tension that's been built up surrounding Greft, and usually he was at the center of all the romantic things that were going on between the people in the group. Greft, for me, I read Greft as kind of like I said, the long haul catalyst that eventually drug out the emotions and the reactions of Thymara that ended up being the reason that her and her dragon respected each other even more. Because what Greft kept doing, and then what Thymara kept doing in response to Greft, which was not backing down, not giving in, not accepting him as their leader, doing her own thing, standing up to him, all of these things ended up being things where originally Centaura thought that Thymara was just, she didn't think much of her. She didn't really respect her. But then she started to see all these little instances of Thymara standing up to Greft and doing her own thing. Eventually, that is the reason that they began to get closer. And yes, they butted heads often internally and externally. And Centaura didn't do things that Thymara thought she should do. And Thymara thought that Centaura was really disrespectful and didn't understand that dragons needed to be praised heavily and all this, that grows. And they do end up respecting each other. And I think it's because Centaura realizes Thymara is not someone to just walk over. She's a very strong woman, young woman, and she's still finding herself. And then Centaura eventually wants to kind of help her do that, you know?
Yeah. And
but Greft was
yeah,
kind of the catalyst for a lot of that.
that's true. That's true. That Greft is this kind of male dominating force, which Derry mentions. I think Thymara and Centaura really bring the feminism to the forefront of these books, that females aren't less weak, property allocated. Yeah, like even when Greft is trying to determine who all the female keepers like get to be in a relationship with, and even though Thymara kind of like likes Tats, also she resists just being paired up with him because she wants it to be on her own terms. And yeah, I think the feminist message there is really powerful by Hobb, through this character of Thymara and the relationship with Centaura. Yeah, just great stuff from Hobb. And I think it really is a theme that Hobb is putting at the forefront of this series, the sub-series, in a way that, this hasn't been with, certainly in the Fitz books. And it was there in Live Ship, but there were so many different competing strong themes where like this one really takes center stage here in this series, because Elise and Thymara and Centaura are really the heart of these books.
Yep.
And Leftrin's kind of just like this, more like a side character. Cedric's also just like secondary character. Are there any other POVs I'm missing there? Was that it for POVs in these books?
I think so. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very kind of female centric in terms of the POVs and the themes, and really powerful too. And yeah. So yeah,
that's true, Claudia.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I think it's secondary as compared to like the way that feminism takes center stage in these Rain Wild books. Oh, we got Shad here. Welcome. Okay,
we could. Derry met. I loved these.
Shout out. So yeah,
I loved these.
They like, if I'm being completely real and honest, in the previous books, like in the Tawny Man series, or like the long chapter like epigraphs, where like we sometimes get interesting like world building and lore, like I would often want to just like jump back into the story and be like, okay, this is interesting, but they weren't always my favorite things to read. But these little quick hitting notes between Detozi and Eric were so great. Like I love that they tied into the plot of these books, and as we go, we slowly get the feel for like this long distance letter relationship that they're building, and like hints that they respect each other and are growing close to each other just through the notes. And then I started to root for an Eric and Detozi ship, a relationship, and then when they start mentioning like visiting each other and marriage, like I'm like, let's go. Oh my god, they were amazing.
And they were so like they were like just little, teenagers in like a burgeoning relationship. They're just like, I can come soon, but if it's gonna be too soon, then just let me know and I won't come yet. Like,
oh yeah,
it was just funny. And I agree. Like, I think I love the epigraphs in the beginnings of the other books, because I think eventually they kind of tied in terms of just understanding the world better.
We got snow.
Oh man.
Oh,
we have snow on the ground, but it's not falling right now.
Oh, it's beautiful. They're like classic soft falling snowflakes right now.
We tried to build a snowman yesterday. It didn't. We got a little one, not a big one. But I like the epigraphs a lot, and Somehow there's a whole lot of what's going on in Bingtown and the Rain Wild's political situation. Yeah. Yeah, Darius right. And this was a really cool like method to just show what a couple regular people are just going through with what's going on in the world right now. Like um and how they talk about how like there's just like Hobb paints this picture of what two guys in a bird trade would care about. Like they're talking about like some nice birds, or like I'm gonna send you a nice bird that you can mate with
Yeah.
other birds and you get like good offspring. It's just like stuff that would excite two bird keepers, you know?
Yeah, but
And they're like bonding over it.
yeah. They mostly cared about their little personal notes that they were sending, and then they were just, like, probably ignoring the official message that they were but, like, the official messages were often really interesting clues as to, like, the plot that we were reading about. We're like, "Ooh, this seems like a secret message being sent by, like, a Chaldean, like, agent," or, like, this doesn't seem or this is like urgent message from Hess family or Elise's family, like worried
Yeah.
about like what's going on with them or Cedric. And and then we're like, oh wow, that's interesting that they're urgently like trying to get in contact with like Elise or Cedric, and wonder, but like Eric and Detosi are just caring about like the pigeons, and like is this new pigeon stock gonna fly faster or and then when this other person starts getting involved and telling them that they can't be sending notes, the way they get so angry and start like shit talking that other person and being like, we're gonna rat you out, and then they like continue sending their personal notes, like, oh my god, love that.
Yeah.
Like Hobb told such a grand, fun story through those little notes back and forth. Were perfect.
Yeah, that was a really, really cool stylistic choice. I agree. I
Oh, I
love
love
them.
it. I hope they continue in the next two. But
Me too.
yeah. Love those. Love those. All right, where are we? So we've talked about things starting out in Bingtown and
Oh, we
in
forgot to mention that
Sorry.
there was a Paragon appearance.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, so once things start moving and Elise is and Cedric are traveling up the river, they go on the Paragon. Okay, maybe my favorite chapter in all of Realm of the Elderlings. And this is why epic fantasy series are great. You can only have this in a giant long-running epic fantasy series, like this kind of moment where like you've spent thousands of pages, so many hours and days of our lives with these other characters, and you get to see them intersect with new characters in a later point in time. And oh my god, that was I was in heaven reading that
My
chapter
smile,
and
like
like,
my smile was just huge.
oh my god.
Because it
Oh,
was
Derek loves
Paragon just
Derek,
being it was more Paragon being Paragon. Like
yeah,
when
just like
when Elise
yeah.
asked him about like she was just trying to like be a dragon scholar and learn more about dragons, and Paragon was just like, I don't talk about that.
Yeah. Oh my god. But
She was like,
watching like
okay.
Althea and Brashen, like that they're kind of like they've fallen into this really respectful like companionship kind of uh co-captains kind of thing of Paragon, um and then meeting their kid, and the way
Yep.
that like once Paragon started to get upset, the way that the kid like jumped into his arms, like I'm getting emotional just
Oh,
thinking about it now. And like
so awesome.
that's one of my favorite moments, I feel like in my whole entire reading life was that moment of like seeing Paragon with so much joy, like playing with the kid, and then like Elise is
Yep.
like, "Is this safe?" And then Althea or Gretchen, I can't remember. It's like that's like the safest place he could be. Like, oh my god, oh my god,
So
it
good.
was perfect, perfect. Yes,
Um,
seeing Althea and Gretchen settled in lives of Paragon, so wonderfully satisfying. Yeah, I wanted more. I hope we do get more at some point because I feel so connected to them. I imagine we'll see them more at some point intersect with larger plot events. But
I'm hoping.
yeah. Oh my god, what a wonderful moment. And like Elise is able to get an example of this kind of liberated woman figure in Althea, and she's like seeing Althea live her life freely and uh so different than everything she's used to seeing, in terms of women in Bingtown. And
Yeah, wasn't there even a moment where where Elise asked somebody about how she could maybe perhaps talk to the figurehead, and she was like, "Should I talk to the captain?" And I think someone was just like, "No, you can talk to Althea. She's just as important and has just as much say as the captain does." Like,
yeah,
and
yeah, no,
Elise was
that
just
was
like,
great.
"Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
cool."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was going backwards a little bit, but I forgot to mention that we got a freaking Paragon interaction, which was just amazing. And I guess the next part would be like just the journey. Like that's most of what Haven is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're with these dragons, and I can just hear Emily Flosnick's audiobook narration of Kelsingra.
Oh, and Flosnick, yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, and Flosnick.
yeah.
That's where we're going, baby.
Singer. So, the most like the dragon who seems to have the most memories is Merkur, and I thought I assumed that was probably Malkin from Malkin's Tangle, like pretty early on. But
Interesting. I
I
didn't.
think it became more and more apparent that was the case. Um, but Dari's happy that she got. I didn't know there was a different narrator for Rain Wild. Okay, nice. Um,
Kelsingra.
yeah, so that was cool that we got some uh also some interesting character development from a character we've spent time with before in live ship with Merkur, and then he's now this kind of like all the other dragons are they're like wild and out of control and like and a lot of them don't have a lot of the memories,
Yeah.
but Merkur seems to be the wise one of the journey and trying to keep everyone in line and trying to remembering more and more of how things are working and yeah, Merkur. So that was cool that he's there and um man, this journey was I was all in on this. Like I think Hobb wrote the environment and the setting stuff of being on the Rainwild River like just so immersively, like whether it's the trees in the forest or the actual river, being on the river, what it's like, the physical strain of
Yep.
it for everyone, the need to constantly hunt or find food for everyone and the dragons, and just like the little details about like when the keepers would be out on their boats or sleeping out with the dragons or on the ship on the Tarman. Like I loved just kind of getting all of the details of the journey. I felt like I was there along for the ride and it was felt dangerous and tense with all the different things that could happen, whether it be like the dangerous kind of animals that were cropping up, or
Yeah.
the giant wave that came out of nowhere. That was like
Yeah.
such an
Dari just
intense
mentioned that.
sequence with the wave. Bye, Shad. Yeah, catch it on replay if you want. The flood was seriously stressing to read. Yeah, so stressful, but man, I was so happy with the way it finally worked out with like the really evil kind of guy that was there to take dragon parts for Chelsea. Like
Yeah.
the way that
What was it?
yeah.
Sinrod or something? I don't know.
I don't remember his name,
Chalcidian guy.
but Leftrin was about to like defeat him in like hand-to-hand combat, I think, right? And then the wave came and it kind of messed that all up. And but eventually it all worked out because it was the dragon that Cedric had taken blood from ended up killing
Yeah.
him. And like that was a really gruesome scene. Like Cedric seemed like traumatized by the way that like the dragon saved his life by like eating the other guy in front of him. Like Hobb didn't shy away from the gore and the gruesome nature of that. Um, but like I was so immersed in this journey up the river. Like this, it was. I love then once we got on the river too. Like we weren't even going to multiple locations. Like these the books were so focused, like it was all multi POV, but around the same location. And so we were
Yeah.
getting different takes on the same kind of events and journey, and seeing everyone is having a different kind of internal life because their own personal conflicts are different. Like Thymara is so consumed with her like the social stuff with the other keepers and her relationship to Sintara. And Elise is like interested in the greater like historical scope and learning about the dragons, and also her personal stuff with Leftrin and Cedric and Hest back in Bingtown. And Leftrin's like, concern for the Tarman and his crew, and also like being obsessed with Elise. And so like it was different spending time, but they were all on the same journey. And so this had felt like it had such momentum because we never went to like a different place. Once the journey started up the river, it was like we were just there the whole time. So I felt it had so much like narrative momentum and interesting kind of tension to it.
Yeah, and it was I think it was really cool how it developed into what their destination would eventually be. Like when they left Kasaric, they kind of, I mean, like we get hints, obviously the dragons start thinking of the word Kelsingra, but it wasn't like obvious that that was where they were going necessarily, because they didn't know where that was. Like the keepers were just following the dragons, assuming that they were going to Kelsingra, and eventually it became, that that's where they were trying to get to. And then it became, well, we don't even know for sure if it exists. So like, man, the dragons are growing and they're getting stronger for the most part, but like, is this all going to be for nothing? What if we can't even find this place? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so there was a lot of that going on. But I think just because we were so focused on strictly the journey, like we got to see how the relationships between the keepers were formed. We got to see obviously Leftrin and Elise uh, kind of develop their relationship. We got to see Cedric like change in many ways, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we got to see. I loved seeing how the keepers began figuring out how to best have a relationship with their dragon, where they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
earning the right to get their real names, or like freaking Rapskull was just like, he just gave Hebe a name and Hebe
Yeah.
accepted it, and all the dragons were like, that's not Hebe's name. And
Yeah.
then they were just like, well, Hebe loves it and he
Yeah.
accepts it, so, and then that was just Hebe's name. And
Yeah.
like, I thought it was really cool just to see naturally how all of these relationships ended up panning out in this really highly stressful and like life or death situation. And
Yeah.
we had different conflicts coming up because some of the members of the keepers were really good hunters, like Greft and Thymara, and then it became, issues of, is any kill to be shared with the group,
Oh,
or
great.
is
Yeah. That's
like,
I'm so glad you
do
mentioned
we
that.
all have to hunt for our
Yeah.
own dragon?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that introduced such an interesting point of inner conflict for Thymara. Because like Thymara is not a perfect character. Like I found it easy to empathize with her, but she also had some personal growth to go through, because like she's has basically spent her whole life just like trying to in survival mode, like hunting for her and her family, and like she's keeping everyone else out at a distance, and then now she's in a different kind of position where it's like this has to be a communal effort where everyone has to contribute to like everyone's survival. And she thinks it's just like natural that if like she gets a kill that it's hers and Sintara's, and it's like she's working for her and Sintara, and then realizing that like it should be more of a group effort, and to see her be more okay with like hunting for the group and sharing out to the dragons that most need food. Like that was really interesting and rewarding to see Thymara become less self-centered and real like just uh having more concerns for everyone. And so yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was like, oh man, Thymara, like I hope you can kind of like see past yourself and your own self-interest, and seeing her slowly grow in that way was satisfying. And Cedric too. You mentioned Cedric's growth. Like he starts, and he was so annoying when he thought the dragons were basically just like unsentient, like wild animals who um were not deserving of any, kindness or respect. And like that scene where he goes out to like get the blood from that injured dragon was like so painful, because I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna kill this poor dragon. And Cedric, we know, like he's not like a bad person, but he's been abused in the past. He's like ignorant a bit about a lot of things, and he's in a bad spot in life right now where he's still like kind of attached to Hest and wanting to do things to like further his own life back in
Yeah.
society. And drinking the blood was the best possible thing that could have happened, because then he is getting the thoughts, or like being able to communicate with that dragon. Do you remember the dragon's name that he ends up bonding to? Um,
No,
but
I'm trying to think of
uh,
it.
but that was the catalyst for his like understanding and growth, and that was so satisfying for Cedric to realize, like he felt so sorry that he had taken the blood from the dragon, and he felt so connected to her now, and realizing that he'd done wrong. But like it took him a long time though to really get to the point where he could like get over Hest and realize that Hest is someone he should forget, and that he shouldn't also try to bind Elise to Hest still. Like when Cedric eventually tried to like push Elise away from Leftrin, I was so angry with Cedric, because it's like,
Yeah.
you're trying to butt in the middle of something that's not your business, and like let her be free from Hest completely and find something new. But he's still all caught up in Hest, and not wanting to screw over Hest. And the arrangement he had with Elise, and how that's beneficial for Hest. And so like I was still so angry with him, but eventually I think it was the dragon that he bonded to, and meeting Jess too, the guy that becomes romantically involved with him, because like Jess is just this person that's not in society and living more freely. But like he showed Cedric that there's a different way to have a romantic relationship, where there's mutual respect and kindness. And that,
Yeah.
I think, combined with the dragon, I think helped Cedric grow into the kind of actual kind, understanding person that he could have been, or still can be, now that he's getting further distance away from the damage caused by Hest, I think, on him.
Yeah, I think yeah, Carson, that was the
Oh, Carson was the bad Chalcidian agent,
no,
right?
Carson.
Oh, Jess.
Jess was
Oh,
the good one.
Jess
Or
was oh
Jess
my
was the
god.
bad
Okay,
one.
I mixed them
Yeah,
up. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Carson was the kindly person that
Yeah.
ends up getting romantically involved with Cedric. Okay.
The hunter.
Yes.
But I think we see again, and Hobb is extremely talented at doing this in a realistic way. We see, because I mean, I believe the way Cedric is written, he is inherently a good person.
Yeah.
But we see what the trauma of spending basically his entire like memorable life under the thumb of Hest has done to him. I mean, because they were friends when they were like little boys. And I think Derry mentioned it earlier, like Hest has been spending decades now grooming Cedric to be what he is to Hest. And so we see Cedric in this completely frantic, spur of the moment decision where he's stressed in a situation he despises, and it just like doesn't know what to do, thinks this is the only opportunity. This dragon's going to die anyways, is what he's telling himself. And goes and does something completely out of character, like steals all this stuff so that he can build a fortune, so he can go back to Hest, and maybe Hest will finally be like, wow, Cedric, you're so amazing. Like,
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this. That never would have happened, ever.
Yeah.
that never would have happened. Like Hest never would have accepted him and loved him for doing this. It never would have been like another level of the relationship. It would have just been more Cedric going back to more abuse. And but the fact that Hest had always treated him like underneath him and not good enough and it was only good to be used. Hest just wanted to prove, or Cedric just wanted to prove that he could pull his own weight, that he could get them to go live a happy life together. It was all unrealistic. Like that was never going to happen. But we saw what all this traumatic events throughout Cedric's life with Hest had finally come to a head and made him do is like almost kill a dragon, drink the blood, steal scales, be super shady about all of this stuff, and then we see the mental turmoil of him worrying about somebody finding it or somebody seeing him or somebody like knowing that he did this. Like he was freaking out with anxiety about all this stuff after he did it, and it was really tough to read at times.
Oh yeah. I was so compelled by Cedric's character. Like I always had like compassion, empathy, but then like just hating what he was doing, secretly and at Hess behest, and then seeing him eventually like slowly grow through Relpta. Relpta's blood, Dari said, really opened him up to seeing what's what. Like, and that and Hob is just a master at these really setting up really complex characters with lots of like complicated histories and mental inner lives and conflicts, and then helping them slowly, organically grow and change. And I loved where this ended up, where he's now like so attached to Relpta, so committed to her, and then just also with Carson's help. Yeah, Carson is adorable. Carson's wonderful. Like now starting to know what an actual like caring relationship could be like, uh, on both sides, where there's not an unequal power dynamic and where one person is completely abusing the other.
And then he was the one that eventually got Cedric to realize he needed to go and be honest with Elise.
Yeah.
No matter what she was gonna say. Like, no matter if she shunned him and didn't want to be friends with him anymore, no matter what, like Carson was really the catalyst that helped Cedric to realize, like, you know what? I have to tell Elise this. Like, obviously, our relationship has been weird and strained, and awkward moments have just been abound recently because they had grown apart, especially with the obvious, like Cedric disagreeing with her relationship with Leftrin, and like it just had become very awkward, and they were childhood friends, and he didn't want it to be this way. So I think Carson was the one that like really got him to realize, like, you gotta go tell her what you just told me about stealing all this stuff, and whatever happens, happens. Like, you did it. You can't avoid that you did it. You just have to accept it and tell her. And it ended up being great. Like, it ended up, yes, it was messed up, but it was a bonding moment because they realized how actually badly they were both being affected by Hest's abuse of them over the years.
Oh yeah, when Cedric finally like comes clean about like his relationship, his sexual relationship with Hest, like it was tough to read because like Elise was in such pain by it, but it felt like nice, like finally everyone can be open and honest with each other. Elise can really know what's going on. After so long of Elise like not understanding everything, it was a relief that everyone could be honest. And I think being honest, it was also helping Cedric just kind of grow into a new place in his life. And with the help of Carson, who is, Dari mentioned, approaching like Burrich with a wild animal. Yeah, just consistent kindness. Like, you are safe and secure here with me. Yeah, Cedric, I think, really responded to that really well. Yeah, Dari says the catharsis between Cedric and Elise was beautiful. to finally have someone who understood their victimhood. Oh, true, that they both knew because they both were victim to the same exact person and kind of abuse. Yeah. Um,
I think
yeah,
they both
really.
realized just how big of victims they were on the course of this trip. Like, the longer they were separated from Hest, it seemed like both of them individually realized how much they were being affected by just being with or near Hest. Because they slowly started to realize, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to do this thing and then sit on, walk on ice and see if Hess is going to blow his top. Like, no, he's not here.
Yep, exactly. I was still so annoyed with Cedric that he he thought he also had to be totally honest about what he knew about Leftrin, uh, that Jess was talking about before Jess died, where like Cedric is just looking for any reason to paint Leftrin as a bad guy. And so when he learned that, you know, Leftrin was possibly involved with the Chalcedean plot to steal dragon stuff,
Yeah.
uh, he didn't even know that Leftrin, like all he knew was that Leftrin was approached. He didn't know that how Leftrin reacted, or like he. And I think the guy even said Leftrin didn't agree. That like Jess even
Yeah.
said like, but Leftrin wasn't in on it, and so I'm angry with Leftrin and got into a fight with him. So like Leftrin denied being part of this plot, and Cedric still sees this as like, ooh, this is painting Leftrin as a bad guy, so I have to tell Elise and ruin her whole kind of new relationship. And I think this was brilliant by Hobb, because I think this was all about psychological projection by Cedric, because it was Cedric that stole the dragon scales and blood. He was involved in the stealing of stuff, and he wanted to just project this onto Leftrin so that he wouldn't feel so guilty about it himself. And he's always just kind of had it out for Leftrin from the beginning, um, and and kind of was never like open minded toward him, uh, and so like Cedric, understandably, I think just how made it so that we can understand his psychology, but it was still very frustrating that he was then like projecting what he was doing onto Leftrin and like trying to paint him as part of this plot, steal dragon parts. But I
Yeah.
do think it was good for all that to come out in the open, because Leftrin knew he was not doing the right thing by hiding that from Elise. Like he was like, this is not going to make me look good that I was even like approached to be part of this, or that this could have been possibly like part of my motivations for the trip. Like I just want this like paradise with Elise to like last as long as possible without any complications. Like Leftrin shouldn't have been hiding that for so long, and it ended up coming back to bite him. But I thought it was satisfying how in the end it all came out, and that Elise was like, you know what? I know everything, and we don't know for certain, what Leftrin's motivation was or involvement was with this plot. But I am deciding that I know Leftrin well enough that I am going to stay with him and trust him, and trust his word. And that was really beautiful for me, how it all kind of eventually played out.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like you said, and even like Cedric ended up realizing, like, oh my God, I am treating this person horribly because I'm assuming all of their motives when there's actually no evidence that those are his motives, and I'm doing everything I'm accusing him of trying to do. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, oh my gosh. And like Claudia said, I don't think Cedric is totally free of Hess's influence. I don't know if being abused by somebody for decades is ever going to just totally go away. I think he will always be affected by this, and so will Alice. But they're growing, and they needed to leave Hess behind, literally and figuratively, to do that, to even have a chance to do that. And they both grew and did things differently. Like, maybe part of Alice's coping in the beginning was just flirting with a man who actually was treating her like a beautiful woman, which Hest never did, even though she knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe that was her way of coping with the abuse. And then it became something else. And, Cedric needed to just I feel like Cedric too, for so long, had been taken care of by Hest that he didn't even feel like his own man. Like he didn't feel like he could do anything just because he wanted to do it. And eventually, he realized once he started talking to Relta and learned that the dragons are not just a financial means to like freedom. He's like, oh, I can just. This is pretty chill. I'm like on a trip with dragons. Let's just like settle in and make the best of it, you know?
Yeah, and Derry mentioned they're doing great for not having a therapist to help them find the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of the things. Like our current society is like very psychologically aware, and so like it's one of the interesting things about fantasy books set in these like Victorian era or pre-modern or medieval style worlds. It's like people are so much less psychologically aware. They don't have professional mental help available to them. They just have to work through stuff, the best they can themselves. Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job here. Derry said, "Be in the now." Night Eyes quote. Oh, that's great. Derry had a question. I'm curious. So I read these books 2 months ago now because I was so eager to get into this series that I read them right at the start of November and gobbled them up in like less than a couple weeks for these two books. And so my memory on a lot of these details is a little bit hazy. Do you know what Derry's talking about here,
I was
Colin?
going to ask her about this if you brought the comment up because I don't entirely know. It might have eluded me too. Was it like
Was it
the,
giving certain of the people like dreams where
it could have been that or like maybe subtly urging Leftrin to like go visit Elise when she was in her study, like stuff like that. Is that what you're talking about there?
yeah, Derry has to fill us in on yeah, the dreams. Okay.
Okay, the dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Give them a nudge, and they seem perfect for each other, and uh, exactly what each other needed, kind of at this moment. So, oh, Tarman also showing constant approval of Elise. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Like, I love any nudges in the right direction. There were great. Uh, yeah, the Tarman, I as a kind of silent character in these books was kind of really cool. Like when Tarman like stopped and didn't want them to go a certain direction, or
Yeah.
like, oh, we should listen to the ship and do what the ship wants. Like the ship knows what's up.
And even Leftrin at times would be like, I don't know why he does the things he does, but I trust him. Like
Yeah. Also, how
like
cool was the
just
reveal of I didn't know what the additions were that Leftrin keeps on thinking about that he made to the Tarman. Like I was like, what did he do to the bottom of the ship? And like once we actually see the ship where it's like there's actual like legs, that was so
oh
cool
yeah,
that we see
amazing.
the ship is like get standing up or able to paddle with its like actual legs. Like that was so cool. And
Yeah,
like
that was
the
really
pole
really
people
cool.
are actually truly just for show.
Yep.
Like that was a very cool. Uh, love that. Also, with Hebe and Rapskull, I in fantasy books in general, like if you don't see a body, you probably should never assume that someone is dead. But like everyone's assuming that they're dead and gone and lost. And like I never thought for 1 second that we were not going to be seeing Rapskull and Hebe again. But like it was
Oh,
very
me neither.
satisfying when they. I didn't think it was going to take as long as it did. Where like everyone's like lost near the end in the marsh, and they're like about to give up hope, and then they see a bird. Like oh, I think we got mention of a Hob through a few hints in that people like saw like a bird or heard a sound, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
think that I know what that might be, and then when it becomes Rapskull and Hebe flying through the air, like
that
great
was
great
so
moment.
amazing.
I loved that.
Yeah, like I don't know how long the time was when they were separated, but eventually, like Rapskull just like comes back. He's like, "Yeah, you guys, you gotta come. Like, look how great Hebe looks. They've just been healing and getting stronger and getting bigger. Like, you gotta come, you gotta come." And then like they're all like, "Oh, how do we get there?" And he's just like, "Oh, Hebe will fly you over." It's just like, what?
Yeah. Oh, great. I loved that moment. And I loved Rapskull's optimism from the very beginning of like that he's gonna get Hebe to fly and like he's not
Yep.
accepting like that the dragons are just kind of like malformed, malnourished, and like that's what they're gonna be like. He was so optimistic from the beginning, just had this light, positive spirit about him that was so refreshing. And uh yeah, like Thymara often I don't think knew what to do with that because she was not that didn't have that same like optimism. She was much more cynical, I think, always, and it's like she just didn't know how to deal with the rap skill, but kind of
I
like
feel like Rapskull
loved
was
him
funny
nonetheless, and like
because
was
like,
attracted to like him as a friend
yeah, yeah. We
and
even
like
like,
liked the
I mean,
security.
he just seemed like the town crazy guy because he'd always be telling him like, "You guys gotta like get your dragons to like bring the wings out. You gotta practice flying, or they're never gonna be able to fly." And I feel like people just walked away and were like, "Man, it's so sad. This guy thinks these dragons are actually gonna fly," you know. And he really
Yeah.
like was just like, "No, like Hebe's gonna fly. I'm telling you guys. Like we've been working at it." And they're all just like, "Yeah, okay, buddy." And then he's the one that flies in.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Like
was
and
so rewarding.
but seeing how the other dragons are so like insecure about themselves, like Centaura never like releases like until she's forced to by Thymara to like have her wings cleaned. Like she had just kept
Yeah,
them because she was so ashamed of that they weren't the wings from like her memory or what she feels like she should have. And she is like so ashamed of them and like man, just the way that Hobb wrote the kind of dragon zone like insecurities um and even just like them the dragons are all of their own individual personalities and uh,
yeah.
they're like not just meek creatures like they're dangerous and they're um so I man that was everything to do with the dragons here I loved it was interesting because I usually watch Mike's book reviews like weekly updates and monthly wrap-ups and so I know like how he's usually feeling about his reads and he was not a big fan of the Rain Wild Chronicles series, and he kept on the same couple things. And I think it's common when you don't when a series or a book is not clicking, you kind of just like glom onto a couple aspects that are like, oh, this was what prevented me. And I think it's usually much more complicated than that. But he kept on mentioning like the YA stuff, the love triangles, and the dragons were not his like preferred dragons, like because they're not like majestic, powerful dragons that we're used to in a fantasy. But uh, I gotta say, like first of all, on the love triangle stuff, I thought that was extremely minimal. Like they're basically like there weren't really a lot of relationships that were dwelt on in the among the keepers. Like their social dynamics were a major
No,
plot point, but like there wasn't really a love triangle going on. So I don't really understand that complaint. But the dragons, I couldn't disagree with that more. Like I find it so interesting that usually we do get just like the ultra powerful predator dragon characters,
yeah,
that these dragons, are physically malnourished and that they have to like deal with their memories of like what dragons are supposed to be like and the memories of flying and they can't they're bound to the ground
yeah,
they're like it's that is so interesting and provided so much you know, interesting like psychology for the dragons and the humans around them and the keepers. Like I was I found it so compelling that it's these dragon misfits combined with these misfit keepers, all shunned, all kind of feeling like they're not what they're supposed to be, but kind of on this journey together and growing
yep.
together. Like I couldn't have loved the dragons in this more. Like I love
No,
that
I agree with you.
they were like, not really the classic type of dragon.
No, I agree. I mean, I love Hobbs Dragons too. Yeah,
Bloody big
bloody big
cats with
cats with
wings.
They do act like my cats. Um,
Uh,
no, by the
yeah,
end of Haven, I ended up really, and like I said, I really enjoy Dragon Keeper too. Like saying that Dragon Keeper was my least favorite does not mean I didn't like it. It was just my least favorite of like a ton of books that I really, really love. But by
yeah,
the end
yeah,
of Haven, I grew a lot closer to a lot of these characters, and the character arcs are very compelling, and we're seeing a lot of growth. And I think that makes sense because to bring it back to what you said towards the beginning, this all kind of felt like one narrative. Like by the end of Haven, like it felt like these should have been considered one story, although it would have been extremely long.
yeah.
But
And I'm not like, I guess you could have cut out a few things along the way of the journey, but there wasn't a lot of fat here. Like I felt like the pacing moved along pretty good in terms of like
yeah, I
important
agree.
narrative events are happening. Uh, not a lot of like spare POVs or anything. So it's like, yeah, it would have been a very chunky single book volume,
Yeah,
but
really big.
I imagine if the publisher is pushing for it to be like more of a YA category book, that she probably put in more of the keeper like social conflict stuff than maybe she would have otherwise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What did Chatty say? Oh, for me it's Dragon Haven, Colin. I love it, but it's my least favorite. Out of all the books we read, 4-star is pretty damn awesome. 4 is the lowest we
yeah,
get with Hob, says so damage. Yeah, 4 is also the lowest I've given Hob book in the Farseer trilogy. But since then, it's actually been all 5s for me on a giant streak from Ship of Magic all the way through Dragon Haven.
yeah.
These have been 5-star reads for me, and it
And
just
these
took me a little
discussions
while.
have been amazing.
Oh yeah, I think they've like helped me appreciate the books a lot more too, because like
Yeah,
you were a little bit more enthusiastic about Ship of Magic, like live ship, and also like the Fitz stories, and so that was kind of like I was feeding off of that enthusiasm, um and hopefully my love of these character arcs in these books is feeding you a little bit.
oh yeah,
um
yeah. You kept telling me like you need to get to Dragon Keeper. You need to get to Dragon because that's right. That's when I was in my slump, and I remember like messaging you like, "This is exactly what I needed."
Oh yeah, I do think a reread, I'll probably love those Farseer books much more. Yeah. The publisher influence with the book split meant both halves got padded. And if that's the case, I think Hobb did some very nice padding, because um, there's
Yeah,
really not much out of these 2 books that I would want to take out. Maybe a tiny bit here and there, but I was very satisfied with this journey. And now it's leaving us at a point like, what is going to happen? I have no clue where this
yeah.
is
Are all
going.
these?
Do you have any?
I mean,
Do you
are
have
all these
any
dragons going to be
thoughts?
good now? Like, no.
Do you have any clue? Like,
That's what I
where is
like.
this going?
That's what I love the most about Hobbes' books is so many twists and turns and things happen that I could not foresee, but end up getting to a place that makes total sense. Like, for instance, at the end of Fool's Fate.
Yeah,
Like, maybe way at the end of Assassin's Quest, I hoped for that ending. I did
yeah,
not think in any way possible we were going to get there.
yeah,
And then she ended up getting there through a myriad of ways. So I don't know what to hope for. I hope that with the dragons getting finding Calcingra and being able to heal and fly, and I mean just the fact that Hebe is flying is evidence that there will hopefully soon be a lot more dragons flying in the world
yeah.
again, which would
Doesn't
be a
doesn't
huge
Haven
influence.
Haven ends with Centaura. Look at Centaura. Another dozen running steps, and this time she beat her wings more slowly and powerfully. And when she leaped, she left the ground behind. Oh, what
Yep.
an awesome ending note. So it ends with Centaura flying. Like,
So I'm hoping that this maybe potentially develops into like some more Elderlings actually being brought into existence by these dragons changing them. And there's kind of a new force, political force, or a one that is reborn, because there used to be one. And
Yeah.
I
What's happening with
anticipate a lot of like. Go ahead.
what's happening? I can't remember exactly where we left things with the war between Chalced and Bingtown. Like, is that at a standstill right now, or are they still kind of fighting? And like, what also is like? Oh, well, we didn't even talk about Malta, but Malta made an appearance in this. So I'm kind of also curious,
Yeah,
kind of like what the deal is with Malta and um, like I imagine Tintaglia is going to be coming back soon into the picture, I would guess. But like Malta's appearance in this was really cool. Like
yeah,
she was like trying to stand up for the dragons and feeling like everyone was taking advantage of them. That was cool to see her again in this series. But like I'm curious if she's going to be wrapped up into the plot again. Like I just have no clue. I don't know what to
I don't
expect
either.
or hope for in City
Yeah,
of Dragons. Like, City of Dragons is the title, so is it really going to focus around like building up Kelsingra as a new Elderlings dragon city? Like that would be really cool. Like that's something that we haven't seen before yet in the whole series of like a human dragon kind of co-effort to build a place to live, and kind of like in the old way where the dragons lived with the Elderlings and they
yeah.
were both kind of like respecting each other, learning from each other. Um, I am so curious. I guess I want that. I'd be interested to see like, could we have some cozy fantasy? Could we have a book that's just like cozy fantasy where there's very little conflict, and we're just like the first section of Fool's Errand, which had lots of tension around like what we were learning. But
Well,
the
yeah,
actual like events were just like them sitting around the cottage, or like going about his daily tasks around his like farm area. Like, can we just have a whole book of cozy to settle in with some good stuff, and maybe save the tension and conflict for the last book? I don't know. Yeah, Derry
I
says
doubt it.
we're
You're
reading
reading
Hob.
Hob.
That's unlikely. But she does
I
cozy
think
so
that there
well.
might be some fan fiction out there of just an entire book of these dragon keepers and dragons building a city together back up. Maybe you can search the internet for that fan fiction, because I
Yeah,
don't know if that's going to happen. There's got
but
to be
like
some conflict. There's
yeah,
got to be some
but they're
people
so far out
realizing
there.
the like
They're
political
so far out there
advantages.
that like
Yeah, they are,
they're not easy to reach. So like
but they have
I don't
dragons.
know what kind of
Dragons can fly
conflict.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, but I would imagine that like they're pretty safe like where they are. That I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I have no clue. But I'm excited to get back into it soon. I gotta read a few extra books right now for buddy reads, like The Forgetting Moon and Warbreaker. But
There's a lot
by
of
the
people
end of
reading
this
that
month,
right now.
yeah, by the end of this month, I'm gonna be getting back to City of Dragons.
Yeah,
And
we'll try to start it around the same time, because I gotta finish Memories of Ice. I gotta finish The Spear Cuts Through Water. Um, those are my priorities at the moment.
Slice of Life. That's what I was looking for. Thanks, Derry. The Slice of Life writing she does, absolute highlight for me. Why Fool's Errand is the one I love the most. Yeah, so I want City of Dragons to just be slice of life, cozy fantasy in Kelsingra. But like Hob wrapped up so many character arcs, and like this whole plot arc of the journey of the dragons to finding Kelsingra was like the major plot arc of the first two books. Like the first two books of Rain Wild really feels like a sub series within the sub series. It feels like this was one story, and now like that's like the first part of a trilogy essentially. but it's like setting up
Yeah.
some crazy stuff. Like I have like absolutely no clue where this is going, which is a little different than like Ship of Magic, where I felt like Ship of Magic set up a lot of stuff which hadn't yet come to their closure or fruition.
Yeah, that is true.
Whereas like these books, like, ooh, we finished out, and there are some really satisfying character arcs. People found their way into like relationships that seem to be working. The dragons are where they need to be. It's like, oh, what a satisfying beginning to this. And I'm so curious where it's going.
I couldn't
Darius
get
says Rain Wild definitely has two distinct halves. Oh yeah,
okay.
not the first book of a trilogy, because like there's only two. Wait, there are two books remaining. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
there's 2 books remaining.
yeah, these 2 books, if we look at them as one volume, could be like the setup for a trilogy, but
Yeah,
in a way where
that
it's
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, it's not obvious at all what has to happen next.
I literally have no clue. Like, and I love that. I completely trust Hob to get me where she needs to get me.
Let's we'll just, what is that? Oh, Slice of Life. Is that what Darius saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're talking about Slice of Life. Okay. So
Yeah.
I think we have more Slice of Life to look forward to, which is nice. All right, any closing thoughts about these 2 books? Anything that we did not talk about that you wanted to hit on?
No, I think we covered pretty much the majority of the plot, and the characters that we talked about I thought were the ones that stuck out with me. And I don't know, overall I was hoping that the way, and I love the way that Keeper started, but I'm really glad that the series grew on me, because I know from
Yeah.
the beginning it hit for you, and by the end of Haven I'm bought in. Like, I want to see where these characters and all this is going to go. So I'm really excited to see where City of Dragons decides to take us.
Yes. Man, for a lot of people, I am curious, like, why the Rain Wild doesn't work as well. Like, yeah, it has the teenager social conflict in it, but it has so much of what Hob has been strong at the whole way through the series. And like at this point in the whole plot arc of the series, like this is such important, meaningful stuff. With these are some of the last dragons in the world, and can we help them survive? And we know it's going to be important for the whole kind of world. And so it's hard for me to imagine why this series gets the kind of general bad rap it does. But maybe
I
it
feel
really is
like the
just
bad rap is just that it's people's least favorite, but still really
yeah.
good. Like,
I almost like you almost hear that qualifier every time I've ever heard people talk about Rain Wilds. I've like heard people say like my least favorite. Like I just heard Philip Chase say it. Like yeah, it might be my least favorite sub series, but that still means it's quite good. But I think I'm gonna hopefully if the last 2 books go well, I will be able to proudly say not use that qualifier, but say that it's one of my favorite sub-series within Realm of the Elderlings.
yeah, you're
so,
loving it so far.
Yeah.
You're loving it, which I think is awesome.
Oh man, just so into it from the very beginning. But like, it started off with that note, the prologue being so engaging with the serpents, and then, like I mentioned, just how invested I was with all these characters from the very beginning. And
Yeah,
I do think part of me thinks, and I don't know if this is going to be true for any individual, but part of me thinks that the focus on the feminism theme and the female POV characters and some LGBT stuff going on, like part of me thinks that the focus there of the series is what maybe turns some people off. And like coming off of like Tawny Man and being in the Fitz POV, I think Hobbs' kind of real stark focus on non-male, heterosexual, cisgender stuff might turn people off. So I do think that is probably part of it. But if you just go into it with just like open mind for empathizing with these new POV characters. There's so much there, even if they are different. Like all these characters are very different from me personally, but if you just kind of go in just trying to get immersed in their POV, like living through their eyes and understanding their kind of personal histories and psychologies and conflicts and interpersonal situation, like it's so easy to get wrapped up in them when they're drawn so intricately and in a complex way that Hob does with characters.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see. We have a lot of story left.
Yeah. Oh, Darius says, it's why I spend so much effort in encouraging mental break after Tawny Man, the letting people know it's a new set of supporting storylines. Yeah, that makes sense. And
I think
if
knowing
people
that
are
going into it helped me a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. And Darius says, Rain Wild Chronicles is a surprise if you're not expecting a pace shift, like Song of Ice and Fire after Storm of Swords. Beast of Crows gets similar treatment. Yeah, I guess a lot of it does. Our enjoyment of something does have to do with expectations, especially if you're in the middle of a long series. I think people also probably view Realm of the Elderlings as like a series. Like they're just going through one series, but it's so different than the normal major series because it's not like the Wheel of Time. It really is divided up into sub-series that are different, have different focuses and feels. And like it's so different than being in the first person Fitz POV. Like it's understanding that it could be jarring, but I do think my guess is that it does have to do a little bit with the focus on these particular POV characters and the feminism and people not loving maybe just like the focus. Like I could imagine Thymara's whole character arc being very frustrating for people. Like people just maybe want her to like just be happy now. Like just stop worrying about your autonomy and your agency or like it's Hob can get a bit uncomfortable, I think, with how complicated she makes these characters and just and Cedric and them not doing exactly what we would want them to and I can understand, but if you're just willing to completely like get out of your own self and into these characters' heads, like they were so compelling and their arcs are so meaningful.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be misconstrued with me saying I didn't like these characters. I think these characters were extremely well written. I just didn't personally connect with them off the rip, like from the beginning, like you did. But I grew to connect with them. It just took me a little longer with this series rather than Live Ship or the Farseer trilogy. But eventually, I did grow to get really connected with these characters and enjoyed them, and they were extremely well written.
Yeah. That's really how I felt with a lot of the Live Ship characters too. Just took me time to get that personal investment where I'm like rooting for them so much, or just like caring about what they're doing and that things are going to work out for them. And then once you are invested and you care, like it's just easier to go along for that ride and to turn off like the critical brain, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He says, if you're not uncomfortable, I wonder where you. Yeah. Uncomfortable is the intention, makes you think why you feel uncomfortable. Yeah, these aren't the most just like escapist reads. Like it's they make you think about your own real life situation and your own psychology and interpersonal conflicts and history and so yeah, I do think certain things in these books can turn people off, because if we're reading fantasy, we might often be in a mode where we want more of an escapist read, and things are just so messy and complicated and feel so real world applicable. Yeah. Oh yeah, like Darius said, like Jared losing her baby was powerful. Like stuff like that, where it's just like, man, brutal stuff. Yeah. Thanks so much. I think we'll probably wrap it up there. Almost hitting the 2-hour mark. And you're doing something later today, right? You're going on Philip Chase's channel? Yeah. Oh wow, doubling up.
I'll be on Dear Doctor Fantasy. So I don't know. He doesn't do them live anymore, so I'm not sure when it will be up. I think we're gonna Zoom and he records it. So sometime soon. I'm assuming it will be up unless it needs to get edited. But I know that Philip is not the editing type, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think there'll be too much post processing going on. But yeah, I'm really excited to get to talk to Philip. I mean, I've been communicating with him via comments and Twitter and stuff like that for a while, but it'll be nice to get to chat with him finally.
Oh, awesome. I'll definitely be checking that out. Derry says the sun is coming up. Wow, you stuck it out with us. Thanks so much for the amazing comments. As always, Derry, and Chadia too.
Yes.
Chadia, thank you. Thank you for being there. And it's wonderful that you joined us. And Derry, if you have not slept yet, get some sleep. Or if this is the start of your day, if you got up early, enjoy the morning, enjoy the sunrise.
Yes.
But yeah, join us again on probably Colin's channel in maybe a month's
Yeah, for
time or
City
less
of
than a month. We'll
Dragons.
see. For City of Dragons, cannot wait for the next installment. Hob is a master. This is such a great ride. So thank you, Colin, for joining. And awesome,
Yeah,
awesome
thanks for
chat.
hosting. Thank you everybody in the chat as well. You guys are always amazing and make it so much more fun.
Thanks, Derry. Thanks, Derry. That's so kind. Well, have a wonderful rest of your Sundays, everyone. Or Monday in the case of Derry. All right, see y'all.
See you guys.